proximity is not the same thing as intimacy. And so even at work, proximity, what I mean by that, I'm not talking sexual intimacy here. I'm talking connection.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you illuminating conversations from impactful leaders in business and our communities. Today, we're here with Randy Gravitt from Lead Every Day. He's also the author of Winning Begins at Home. We're going to talk all about balancing work and personal life today and why it's important for you and your team. Thanks for joining us today, Randy.
Hey, Jason, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be with you and appreciate all you do to help leaders. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. So excited to have this conversation with you and share it with everyone. For all of you who are watching or listening, hit like, comment, and share right now so we can bring these game-changing ideas to as many people as possible. And don't forget to subscribe. You're not going to want to miss any of the upcoming conversations we have with amazing leaders like Randy. So let's get into it, Randy. Tell us about the book. What inspired you to write Winning Begins at Home? And how does it shatter the myth that success at work requires sacrifice at home?
Well, yeah, there's a lot there in that question, but thanks for that. And the book, I've got a copy here. I'll hold it up. Winning Begins at Home. It's a leadership parable, I'll call it. Short story, 120 or so pages, and then a 70-page basically blueprint at the end of it on how to build a great life outside of work. And back to your question, our team works with companies and organizations. We do keynotes and trainings and all kind of stuff, consulting like you do, and trying to help organizations chase high performance. And we kept running into this conversation basically where people were saying over and over, we're applying your stuff, our engagement's going up, our execution's getting better, our leaders are better than they've ever been, and yet there's still this issue, and we're talking to them, and it turns out that things outside of work are not so good. And so I'm a content guy. I started searching high and low to try to find where's the resource to help people build the family that they want, or really just to build the life that they want outside of work. Families look all kind of ways these days, but I couldn't find anything for leaders, and so I thought we'll just create this resource and try to help people. Because the conversation, Jason, was really what you talked about there, that tension at the end. The way I say it is this: if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I don't think the goal is to build some great company and blow up. What happens if work is, I'm not sure work is 9 to 5 anymore, but if work is 9 to 5, what happens out from 5 to 9? If you don't succeed there and you don't have life-giving, relationships and family, whatever you got going on there, I think there's a lot missing. And so I even believe it makes you better at work if you get it right at home. And so we thought we'd create this resource. It's been a fun conversation the last couple months since it's come out. A lot of people trying to give it to their employees and trying to have that conversation started. And we live in a world now where everybody's talking about mental health and relational stuff and all that. So it's been a good tool to help people have that conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in and read it when I get a chance. I love the continuous assessment you talked about, where you and your clients were saying, we're getting things right, we're doing things well, it's coming together, but there's still this gap. And you went and you found a way to help fill that gap for your clients and the leaders you're trying to serve. And I agree, there's a time and a place for the gas pedal down all the way, throttle the firewall kind of stuff. When we were in the military, if we were doing an operation or a big test, for a week or 2 weeks or 3, however long it was, there's a time and a place for that. Or startup life, right? If you've ever worked with a tech startup, we all know, startup life it's kind of, instead of 9 to 5, it's kind of 5 to 9. Or I remember when I was an executive officer in the Air Force, I had a colonel that I worked for who had joked, I only expect you to work 9 to 5. What you do with the other 4 hours of the day, that's up to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is kind of my. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's always going to be tension there, and you wouldn't believe how many people have asked me over the last couple months since we've gotten this thing out. Is there a such thing as work-life balance? And let's just all be honest. Your waking hours, if you count only your waking hours, you're going to be at work probably more than you're going to be at home. And I know people work from home, these days. I mean, it's all kind of, work life looks different than maybe it's ever looked as well. But there's always going to be this tension because there's always work to do. And I think, Jason, what happens is if we're not careful, we don't really know what to do outside of work, especially marriage and family kind of stuff. Nobody's giving us a manual on that, on, how do you build a great family? We do kind of know what to do at work. Here's how you get a promotion. Here's the job description. Here are the expectations. And so if we're not careful, we feel like we're struggling at home. We'll just go back to work and default to that and work more. And you're just like me. There's never been a day, I'm guessing, Jason, where you finished your work day and thought there's really nothing left to do. There's always more to do. You know that. And so we've got to be careful not to take work home when we go home. I think the key is to be there when you're there. When you go home, be at home. And when you're at work, put the pedal down, like you say, and let's do great work. Let's build something great. But let's don't just build something great. Let's go home and make sure that we build something great there as well.
Fantastic. Let's be engaged in work and our work colleagues at work. Let's be engaged with our family and our friends in our home life. And yes, that tension will always exist, but let's recognize that tension exists and do the right thing in the right place at the right time. So tell me how you got into this line of work developing leaders. What drove you to dedicate your life to leadership development? And how did you turn that passion into a mission with Lead Every Day?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I've always been passionate about leadership. I've actually just turned 60, so it's hard to believe that these decades have gone by so quickly. Just turned 60 last week, and really for the last 4 decades, I've been passionate about leadership, studied leadership, learned it, tried to help the teams that I've been fortunate enough to lead through the years. But I think it really all stems from this belief now that it has really grown over the years. But I think when people have a good leader, it makes it just really good for them. It makes it good for the leader as well when we lead well. And I've been in situations before where my leader was not so good. And when your leader's not good, it's not good for you. And so I think about what would it look like for everybody to have a great leader. I mean, let's go back to home for a second. I'd love for everybody to grow up in a great family. That doesn't always happen. I mean, there's every family's messed up at some level, and every workplace is as well. But a lot of it does go back to leadership in the workplace. What kind of leader do we have? And so I think if we can, the people who listen to your podcast, if they can lead well, not only are they going to benefit from that, but the people around them are going to benefit. I think the world gets better there. We just had in the U.S., we just had the elections a few weeks ago, and no matter which way you voted, I was not convinced before the elections that the government was about to solve all the problems that we have in the world. I'm an old educator. Back in the day, I spent a few years teaching school. I got a bunch of friends who are teachers, and they're telling me, and they're great teachers, but they're telling me education, although important, and I'm a big believer in education, that's not the answer to everything. I'm crazy enough to believe that if leaders get it right, it really can make things better. And so I think no matter who's listening, whatever situation they're in, family, community, school, church, home, anywhere, if it's well led, it usually is at a pretty healthy place or headed toward a healthy place, and it just makes it better. So I believe that for a long time, and don't know anything really more important than leadership. And so we've pretty much given our lives to trying to help encourage and equip leaders to be their very best.
Amazing. What a great question for all of us to ask ourselves as we're wrapping up the year, wrapping up 2024 and heading into 2025, of what would the world be like if everyone had a great leader?
Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, it would be just amazing.
Just everybody just, after you've watched the podcast, sit down with your favorite beverage and ask yourself, what would the world be like if everyone had a great leader? And just listen to what answer comes to you, and then move forward with that.
Well, and the moving forward to me, Jason, is the next question is, what's it like to be led by me? And so every single person who's listening, how cool would it be if the world everybody had a great leader? Yes, but I can't control the rest of the world, but I can control what I'm going to do. And so if your listener will push themselves to say, what's it like to be led by me? And maybe what's it like to be loved by me? When we talked in the book, one of the questions we ask in the book at home is, how would I need to live my life in such a way that the people who know me the best actually love me the most? And I think the same thing is true at work. I mean, I know love at work and home is different, but I would love to be the kind of leader that the people who follow me would say, I love being on his team. In fact, we know this. There have been some leaders who people would just literally run through a wall for them. And then we wonder for other leaders why everybody's so disengaged. And, we're engagement. Well, I'll take a little side road here. Engagement in the US, I think, is below 70% now. So, which means that almost 75% of people don't really care about what their boss cares about. And the reality is, people a lot of times have left their leader and haven't told them yet. And it's bad when they leave you and tell you, I'm leaving. You lose people, and we do talent workshops all the time and trying to help people build talent organizations, created all that content for Chick-fil-A, and they've got an amazing organization. But I think the more dangerous thing is when people leave you and they don't tell you. They stay on the payroll, they suck up morale, they're negative, they're critical behind your back, and it's really hard to go to a positive place with negative people. And so I think a lot of that's on the leader. It's not an engagement issue as much as it is a leadership issue. So all this kind of ties together.
Yeah, 100%. I think the latest number I saw was 13% of employees are actively engaged right now, which means everybody else is doing the bare minimum not to get hassled by their boss. And you just came up with two great questions that we can all ask ourselves. And I think we fixed it, Randy. I don't think we need to talk anime. I think we solved the problem, but I do have a couple more questions for you. So let's stick with it. So to go back to the work home family balance thing, what is the hidden cost of an imbalance in work and home life, family life, not just for the individuals, but for the entire organization?
Yeah, well, I think there's maybe a couple of sides to this that are sort of obvious. One, if you talk about the work side, I think production and performance ultimately suffers. If things are not good outside of work, it's really hard to do your best work. And even if you use that as your escape, we're all emotional beings, and we're all affected by our relationships, and not just relationships. Not everybody here is even, married, obviously. But they've got relationships outside of work. And even beyond that, let's think about our fitness. That affects our work. And let's think about even financial things outside of work. That's going to affect how we think about work and the decisions that we have to make if we've not stewarded, our opportunities financially. And so there's lots of things there, but ultimately performance hurts on the work side. I think it's affected big time. At home, for me, the way I think about it is it's not necessarily performance, because you're not really thinking about performance at home. To me, I would call it regret. That's what's on the line. That's the cost if I'm not careful. And if anybody listening will just sort of fast forward to I heard years ago, I think it was Stephen Covey, who talked about writing your eulogy and thinking about that and what's it going to be like when you're dead. I'd prefer not to do that. Let's go to our 80th birthday party, and let's say we're still there. And you've got the people that maybe your spouse if you're married, or you've got your brothers and sisters, or maybe you have kids, or my wife and I now, we have 8 little grandkids. We have 4 daughters. I didn't mention that, so I should have said that. But our daughters are grown now, and they're all married, and now we've got 8 little grandkids. And so let's say they're all going to come to that 80th party. And maybe some people I worked with, friends, family. I mean, you just got you would want your people at your 80th party, right? What would you want them to be able to say about your life? And if I'm honest with myself, I'm not going to care if are they going to come and say, man, he was really great at returning all my emails. Email's important. But if I go home at night and all I'm doing is still thinking about my email from the day, and my technology is always on, and I don't have an ability to shut off work when I go home. I'm reading bedtime stories maybe, but while I'm reading those, I'm still at work in my mind. I'm thinking about the project, or who do I need to call when I get these kids in bed? And I'm there, but I'm not really there. I think that's where I get to that 80th party, and I look back and I lived there, but I really wasn't there. And that to me is where regret will come from. And I think there are times along the way that we have regret. You may have somebody listening right now, they're going, I wish I could do it all over. You can't do it all over, but your regret actually can be a gift. If the current regret you're feeling, it can actually cause us to want to do better at work or home. So I understand regret's going to show up, and it's not the enemy. It actually is maybe an enabler of better. But I don't think you want to get to the end of your life and just have this long line of regret because you never did what you knew you should have done. And so for me, performance at work, regret at home, and those are a little bit different. Maybe regret at work too. If I don't achieve my best and I get down the road and my company didn't do what it was capable of, and I'm guessing everybody listening is capable probably of more than what we're doing right now. So let's raise the bar as we go into this new year. But I to me, those are the costs. I think it's just dangerous to squander it and think that we're going to be happy when we get down the road. I don't. That's not what I believe. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of signals for us to look out there for ourselves to say, maybe I'm not out of balance at home. Maybe I'm out of balance. Maybe home's not going as great as it could, or I'm carrying things from home into the workplace. And I remember when I was a brand new flight commander in the Air Force, I had someone working for me who it turned out was avoiding problems at home by spending a lot of time at work and working really hard on things.
Wow.
And that was really the first experience I had with that kind of thing. My squadron commander had to pull me aside and say, hey, I think you need to pay attention to what's going on. So my question for you, Randy, is what are some of the signals we should be looking for in the people who work for us, the people on our team, so we can see maybe they're out of balance at home, or they're out of balance at work, or they're out of balance in general? What should we be looking for? And how can we have those conversations without crossing too many personal boundaries?
Yeah, that's great. Well, several things I would like to say here. First of all, there are personal boundaries. I get that. But I also think when we work with people, we want to know people, and we want to know their story, and we want them to know our story. We need to be vulnerable with them, and we need to understand what's going on with them. And I've heard leaders say before, we tell our people to check your heart at the door. That's not going to work. I mean, people don't check their heart at the door. They bring their heart with them. And if they got into it with their 8th grader on the way to school this morning, that's affected them. Or if they don't have let's say the water heater went out and they've got a $3,000 plumbing bill all of a sudden that you don't know about. I mean, that clouds the way they think. And not everybody needs to know everything. I get that. But to understand what somebody's going through and that we're in this together, empathy is a word that I think it's used a lot, but I'm not really sure that everybody understands. I mean, we probably could define it, but I actually looked it up, and it means to understand and share in the feelings of another person, which means, Jason, if you're getting a promotion and you're on top of the world, and I see that and I understand that, but if I secretly am over here thinking, I wish I'd gotten a promotion, or why does everything always good happen for Jason, nothing good happen? Well, that's not empathy. That's envy. If you're going through something really hard and I understand it, and you've got a diagnosis, or you got or your water heater went out, or whatever. I mean, your car broke down, or you've got a major expense. I'm over here. I understand that, but I'm sitting here secretly going, man, I'm glad that's not me. That's sympathy. That's not empathy. Empathy at work is when we really understand what that other person is going through, and we don't feel it like they feel it, but we feel it if they're our teammate. And I think our workplaces would be better if we had that kind of relational equity. And by the way, people are going to follow you if they know you see them as a person, not just as an employee. I think so many times it's tempting to extract value from the people who are following you rather than adding value. And I think the leaders they have that almost servant leader mindset. To me, that's that's a little bit of a loaded term. I mean, a lot of people think, I don't want to be the doormat or whatever. And I think servant leaders do whatever they need to do to help the other person win. Meaning, if I need to hold you accountable, that's the way I serve you. There's times you need a kick in the pants. There's times you need some grace. There's times you need an afternoon off to go handle this situation. That comes from knowing each other and understanding that. And so to me, that conversation at work is really important. But let's go back to the balance. How do you balance, that person or employee that's struggling with that? To me, I think a part of it is understanding that balance. I heard somebody say one time, balance is learning to live in the center of the tension, meaning there's always going to be tension. Sometimes things are really great with my wife, let's say. And sometimes things are really great with my kids. And sometimes things are really great, maybe even financially. But over here, I'm not really taking care of myself like I should right now, or work is a little bit out of balance right now. And so I got 3 or 4 areas that are pretty good, but now things are not so great in a couple of them. And now I'm feeling that tension. And so my equilibrium is almost off. That's my balance, right? It's just like things. And I don't think there's ever going to be a time where all the areas of your life are perfect. That's just not, that's not human. I mean, it's like, we're not Iron Man here and everything's just perfect all the time. I mean, they weren't even perfect for Iron Man, right? And so I think you've got to understand that tension, that now work is going really great and my kids are still talking to me and our financial, and I'm going to the gym, but now my wife is like not real happy with me, or now my wife is happy with me, but financially we've got this. So it's there's always going to be stuff that's not right. And I think as a boss, let's go back to work. If you pay attention and listen to the people around you, what they're saying, and if there's something you can do to lean in and help them. And again, let's go back to that servant leader, and I'll give you one little picture of it, and then we'll move on. But I like the idea of an offensive lineman. It's football season. The NFL playoffs will come up here in a couple of weeks, and if anybody's listening and they like football, or even if you hate football, if I said name a football player, 9 times out of 10, when I ask this question, they'll always name a quarterback. There's never been a time where anybody's ever said that you got your Vegas Raiders out there. Nobody's ever named the left guard for the Vegas Raiders, or the right guard or the right tackle for, the Illinois, college team. Nobody even knows the names of these people. And yet they're the ones who game after game, practice after practice, they keep showing up and they open up a hole so somebody else can score. And any good coach will tell you, if you can't block the other team, you can't beat them. And yet we undervalue, or we don't really appreciate, I guess is the best way to say it, the power of an offensive lineman, somebody who just shows up and says, I'm going to move somebody out of the way so somebody else can win. And I think the bosses at work, even the moms and dads at home, the people outside of work who for their friends and family, they're constantly showing up and thinking, how do I help somebody else win? To me, they're the winners. Those are the ones that are the most valuable, if you want to think about it that way. And so I think there is tension and all that. But I think if we show up with that mindset and that heart, really, of how do we help the people on our payroll win? How do we help them succeed? I think it goes back to something I believe it was Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker. He said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll always have what you want. If Zig were still here, I think he would say, you don't help people get what they want because you want what you want. It just ends up being a byproduct of you still have the heart to help other people. And the people I know, they're the best leaders. They're the ones who are constantly helping other people succeed. And man, they're always successful when I look at those people. So that's a long answer, but I think it's a big deal that we pay attention to this if we're in charge of something.
Yeah, it's a great answer. There's a lot there, I hope people go back and listen to that again after they hear it the first time, just to make sure they take away everything from it. But my big takeaways were, as leaders, if we want to be successful leaders, if we want our team to be successful, we have to give ourselves permission to look for the balance, to be in the middle of the tension instead of to one side or the other. And then we have to give ourselves permission to experience that empathy, have that empathy for people in the workplace. And that's something I think we've gotten away from in the last couple of decades, is giving ourselves permission to be empathetic. We've gotten real transactional in some cases. And I think we, as leaders, it's important to give ourselves permission to do those things. So tell me a little more about your company, Lead Every Day, why you started it, what are you hoping to achieve for your clients?
Well, we say that we dream of a world well led. We talked about that earlier. Ultimately our tagline is kind of your world well led, because the people we work with, we do believe they can make a difference. And you used the word there, transactional. We're big on transformation. We think that, I think that is it's a dangerous mindset when we're transactional, like you're saying. It's just like we don't, just like you said, we don't want to think that way. We want to think, how can we help somebody get better? And so about 11 years ago now, well, I say company. I just wanted to know, can I help people on my own? Just I was speaking and writing, and we doing all kind of content and stuff. Chick-fil-A had asked me to do some events for them, and we'd written a book for college students, and I was doing some stuff to try to encourage the next generation, and some conferences and stuff. And so I thought, can I literally leave? I was going to be 50 at the time, and we have 2 daughters that were in college and 2 that were wanting to go to college, and my wife really likes living indoors, and so it made no sense in any universe to say I'm going to quit my job, but I did. I walked away from a job I'd had for 18 years, and I thought, I'm going to try to give this a go, and I'll see what happens. And I gave myself this little speech. Go back to the regret thing. I thought, if I try this and I can't pull it off, I'll be disappointed in myself that I don't have what it takes, but I won't have any regret. And I was reminding myself, you're going to be an old man someday, and if you don't give this a shot, you're gonna have you'll be disappointed that you didn't try it, but you'll have regret that you didn't try it. And I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I told myself, you can live with disappointment, you don't want to live with regret. And so that was my deal. I mean, that's what happened. And so started out trying to help some companies. It just went crazy, which was what a blessing. And the next thing you know, I've got more business than I can do. We're coaching people, starting to coach people on top of the workshops and the keynotes and all that stuff. And so I had a buddy of mine who came on and helped me. He was a consultant, and we started growing this thing, and doubled the business. And I guess I doubled it in year 2 by myself, and then we doubled it again in year 3, and it's just going nuts. And so now, 11 years later, we got about 25 people that are working on what we do, and we coach and consult and train. And, I mean, if you'd have told me then we're going to have all this, it would have been a lot easier to jump out of the boat. But, yeah, we've just been grinding day after day, helping leaders. And it turns out there are a lot of people out there who really want to chase high performance. And we've had the privilege of working with some amazing companies. I mentioned Chick-fil-A, but we've done stuff with Kroger, the grocery store chain, and Grand Hyatt. And but we work with a lot of local companies that do, exterminators and plumbers. And I mean, it's all over the place. It's incredible. But the thing is, every single organization needs to be well led. And so I think there's opportunity there. It feels like job security, which is fun, but we've met some amazing people, just like you. You get to meet amazing people as well, and encourage them, and to see them win is so fun.
Yeah, well, we certainly have a lot to talk about on your 80th birthday when that rolls around. So
we'll see. We're working toward it.
You've worked with a lot of elite clients. You mentioned Chick-fil-A, Kroger. You've worked with a bunch of professional sports teams. What's the most surprising leadership lesson you've learned from working with those high stakes environments?
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned a couple there. We've done work with some Major League Baseball team, and the last few years have been connected to the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, obviously they're a pretty amazing organization. You start looking at any of those organizations, Chick-fil-A, they're obviously, a lot of people think that the top quick serve restaurant in the country. I think what I've learned is a couple things. It does really rise and fall on leadership. I think it was John Maxwell who said that it all rises and falls on leadership. I think there's a lot of truth to that. It always goes back to the leader. The organizations that are well led, that is foundational to me. But I think there's a couple other things I would say. High performance organizations are always, it seems like they always have this act as one mindset. You talked about the military. By the way, thanks for your service. But there's a great example of alignment. When there is alignment, it's just amazing how you can take territory. Military, obviously, you're in a battle, but I think businesses in a lot of times are in battles as well. They're different. I don't want to compare the two, but the reality is there's so much that is squandered when there's a lack of alignment or a lack of engagement. That would be the other thing I would see, that the people are leaned in those high performance organizations. And then ultimately at the end of the day, they execute, Jason. I mean, it's if you're not really a high performance organization, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, like think about this time of year, we've had all kind of packages coming with Amazon. Well, the fact that they're delivered, in 2 days, like they say, that's what makes them elite. I mean, if the packages never came, I was actually in Argentina a few weeks ago, and the guy was saying, our Amazon down here is terrible. He said, we don't have an Amazon, but we have a company that's similar to Amazon. And he said, it takes 5 or 6 weeks to get your package. And he said, it's just a mess. And Amazon has their reputation. Chick-fil-A has their reputation. The food's always good. The place is clean. They're very friendly. You get through that line and you pull into the thing and you're like, can I really get through this drive-through? There's 50 cars. And somehow 6 minutes later, I got my spicy sandwich in my hand. I'm going, how did that happen? They're elite. The sports teams win that are elite. On and on and on. We got to deliver. I think the definition that we use for execution is important. We say it's to do the right thing the right way every time. We did some work with Chick-fil-A, tried to help them define that, and I love that definition. But every time we start talking about it in companies, they always, it's crazy how many times they'll say, that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about execution. And we say, that's like the gymnast who just wants to do the dismount. If she doesn't understand that it's the energy and momentum of the entire routine that propels her to stick the landing, she'll always leave points on the table. And I think the businesses that don't understand leadership and alignment and engagement are never going to execute at the level that they're capable of. So those are some of the things to me that all those high performance organizations have: leadership, alignment, engagement, culture, all that in common, that actually are enablers to help them stick the landing.
It's amazing. You answered my next 3 questions in that one answer to the question. So that's thank you so much for that. It's astounding to hear the success you've had. And I really love to see these organizations, whether they are these really elite organizations or doing just kind of a day-to-day thing, like making spicy sandwiches, and that idea of alignment. That's so enlightening to me.
I'll mention a couple other. There's a couple organizations here in Atlanta that are smaller. I mean, Chick-fil-A sounds really big, or the Buffalo Bills. That's huge. But we have an insurance agency here in town that I'm just so proud of them. They've invested in their leaders for 5 or 6 years in a row, and they're a $25 million company. Still a nice sized company, really great, pushing 30 million now. But they're gonna end up. It's gonna be amazing to see what they do. But they were just chosen best mid-sized company in Atlanta this last year, which was cool. We've got an exterminator company that we work with, and they're literally all over the country now. They're a privately held exterminator company. But I remember when we started working with them, I don't know, it's been probably 10 years. Their goal was just double-digit growth every year, and they've done that over and over. And I think they went from was it 150 million they were doing a decade ago, and they're going to do, I think, $500 million this year. So they have literally, just to watch these companies implement some of the stuff that we're talking about. You don't have to be big to be elite. I mean, you really can start where you are, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
I love it. Let's take a break from the serious questions. Let's play a game. Are you up for a game?
Yeah, it'd be great, man.
Okay, this game is called Rapid Response.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, you don't have to give me a one-word answer. Elaborate as much as you like. Spend as much time. Give us all the detail, as much or as little as you want. But we're looking to get the first thing that comes to mind from these questions, okay?
That's great. Let's do it.
All right. Randy Gravitt, rapid response round. Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
Okay, so obviously your podcast, the Leader's Mindset, that's cool. And I will say one thing. I love the idea of the whole mindset thing, because I think the way you think is a big deal. We have a podcast called The Lead Everyday Show. We do it. We've done it a couple hundred episodes now. Mark Miller and I. Mark is a guy who was a VP of Leadership Development at Chick-fil-A. For 40 years he was there, and now he's he says you retire from a job, you don't retire from a calling. And so Mark's jumped in with me, and we've been laboring together for a couple years now. Got a new book coming out next year. But Mark and I have that Lead Every Day show. One of the podcasts I like, totally off the radar here, is a podcast called Chasing Scratch. It's a golf podcast. These two guys, old buddies, and they've gotten together and done this thing, and it's pretty fun show as well. I mean, I could give you a bunch more, but those are a couple.
No, that's fantastic. I love golf, so I'll be checking out that one. We always love when we always love when our guests plug their own stuff, and we really love when you plug the Leader's Mindset. So future guests, if you're watching, remember that when you get to your rapid response round.
That's right. That's good.
What's one question we should ask ourselves about our work and home balance?
Well, I go back to the question I mentioned earlier, but what's it like to be led by me, and what's it like to be loved by me? I think those questions will push me back to it. The schedule is the schedule. If I'm asking those questions and I'm really honest with myself, and and when I say honest with myself, there's it's a look in the mirror moment, right? But there are two kinds of mirrors. You know this. I mean, think about it. If you go to a hotel room, there's a big mirror where you brush your teeth, but the really nice hotels have a little mirror over on the side, which if you've never looked in one of those, don't do it. It's just kind of scary. But that's the makeup mirror. And I think leaders need to take a makeup mirror look at what's it like to be led by me, and what's it like to be loved by me, and maybe ask some people around you and some relationships you have, and almost your own self 360 mindset. I think if we can really get real with those questions, it'll change our schedule. It'll change our priorities. It'll really realign us to the things that matter most, I think. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, I'll be looking out for your new piece of merch, the Lead Everyday makeup mirror that you'll be selling on the website.
We can send that out. That's good.
Who is someone underrated we should all be paying attention to?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll give you a couple of them. One of them is a young leader that actually does a lot of our marketing. A guy named Stuart Mullins. He's a 25-year-old guy who loves Stuart. He's pretty amazing. Another one I'll give you on the other end of the spectrum is a guy named Dan Webster that is he's 70. He's in his 70s now. Dan probably understands leader development about as well as anybody I've ever known. He and I actually co-authored a couple books together several years ago, but he's just a dear friend, but definitely an underrated leader. If anybody's listening who wants to do a life plan, basically you want to take a makeup mirror, look at yourself a couple of days, Dan will host you, hire him to do that. It's the best money you'll ever spend to go and spend a couple of days with him in Holland, Michigan. And if you're upside down in what you're doing and where you need to go, that guy can help get you back on track. And he was really instrumental for me. I don't know, it's been probably close to 20 years ago now. I did that process with him, and it helped me get back on track in the way I was thinking. So Dan Webster, he's a beauty. Shout out to Dan there.
All right, don't answer right away because you get a choice on this one. What is your go-to song to get pumped up, or your walk-on music?
Well, that's good. That's a good question as well. So I'm a country music guy. I love country music. I'd probably choose some kind of country song. But the last time I did an event, they knew I was an old basketball coach. I coached basketball several years ago, and so they used the old Harlem Globetrotters. Sweet Georgia Brown was playing when I came on stage. So that would be a couple of ways to go there. But I'm a country music guy at heart.
All right. The biggest influence in your life?
Well, I would say the biggest influence in my life would be my faith. It would be, my relationship with Jesus really would be where I would go with that. But if I had to pick people here, I think he's here, but if I had to pick people that, my mom's been a huge influence in my life. She's still around. Mom will be 85 in February, and she's just a great leader, awesome. So positive. My dad passed away I guess it's been about 8 years ago now, and hard to believe it's been that long, but she's still just going strong, and yeah, amazing. Dan has influenced me big time. I mentioned him. Mark Miller has had a huge impact on my life. My wife has been by my side for 37 years now, and just I trust her about as much as anybody. As much as anybody. She's just amazing. And so, yeah, I've got good people around my life. I will say this: I've got a friend who always said that your friends will always determine the quality and direction of your life. And as I look back now on my life, I've been around for a while. That is just 100% true. The people you surround yourself with have so much influence on the way you think, where you go, where you work, what you do. I mean, all that stuff. And so, I would say to anybody listening, surround yourself with great people. I mean, it's just to me, that's the key to, and that makes life great as well. Those relationships make it better.
Well, it sounds like you've got some great people in your corner. What's a book everyone should read?
Well, I'd love for everybody to read Winning Begins at Home, for sure. I would say I'll give you an old book, maybe in a new book. An old book is, I say old, not that old, but probably 60, 70 years ago. I'm not sure when it was written, but Peter Drucker wrote a little paperback called The Effective Executive. And I think any leader would benefit from that little, I mean, it's a short, it's amazing little book, easy read. Probably the modern audience might not know about. I've been around here long enough to know about that book, and so I've read it, through the years. It's been a good one. I've enjoyed Mark's books lately. He's just written one called Uncommon Greatness. It's about the fundamentals of leadership, so I would recommend that. And I'm constantly reading all kind of stuff. I mean, it's I'll give you a thought here that's a little bit of a side road. So I'd say no matter what you read, and I would encourage all, they say readers are leaders, or leaders are readers, whatever. I think leaders are learners. I think today there's lots of ways to learn. Podcasts and articles and conferences and books are a good one. But I would just say this: no matter what you read, if you have an hour to read, and I would say let's all be diligent to set aside time to be readers. We'll be better thinkers and better leaders if we are, for sure. But one of the things I heard I thought was really good: if you've got an hour to read, spend 30 minutes reading, and then spend 30 minutes thinking about what you read and thinking about what you're going to do with what you read. So that'd be my plug there for books. But yeah, I love reading.
Great advice. The best holiday season activity.
Well, Thanksgiving's hard to beat for me. I just love it. It's pretty amazing to get everybody together around the table. We actually kind of took it to the next level. A couple of weeks ago, we rented a cabin for the weekend preceding Thanksgiving, and we had our daughters and son-in-laws and the grandkids. There were 18 of us. I mean, it was amazing. And we spent 4 days together and just had a great time, ate too much, just hung out, played with the little ones. The grandchildren are all, the oldest one's 4, but there's not another one that's older than 2. So there's 7 of them that are 2 and under. It was literally like a little preschool when we get together, and it's so much fun. But Thanksgiving is near and dear to my heart because, well, I think we have a lot to be grateful for, and I think we can practice gratitude year round. But I love that we set aside a day to think about the things that we're thankful for, the people who serve us in the military, and the people that have gone before us in our family life and that we work with, and our families, all that kind of stuff. I think about the people who have passed on now, and I love the old quote: "Those who drink the water should never forget those who dug the well." And my life is really great because a lot of people have come before me and surrounded me and helped me, and I'm really grateful for that. So to me that's a big one. But I'll also say that the other part of that is Thanksgiving Day is the day that I actually proposed to my wife 40 years ago now, almost 40 years ago. And so it's always been it's always been my favorite holiday. It's a great one.
I see what you did there. Made it easy to remember.
Yeah, I'll actually have to get her to listen to this now because she'll like that I gave her a little shout out. Shout out to Laura there. That's good.
Well, we're glad to hear about all the amazing things going on with your family. It sounds like you had a really great time.
It was fun.
What's your dream vacation spot?
Wow, man, you're asking some good questions. I'd love to go back to Scotland. I've been to Scotland one time before. I'd love to go back there, and I've never been to Greece. I'd like to do that. We had a couple of bucket list places this last year. We got to go to New Zealand, so that one got checked off. But never been to Greece. I think that would be fun. Yeah, I mean a few days on the coast there would be pretty nice, probably.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, especially coming into the winter months. I think Greece would be
Yeah.
even from Vegas, getting out to Greece for a few days would be great.
Yeah.
What is an industry trend flying under the radar right now?
Well, I think I'll say this. I think culture is one that we hear about all the time, but I do think that when I think about culture and the talent that people are attracting, I just see so much people hoping things will get better. And we always say hope is not a strategy. And so I think people don't really have we know we're supposed to be working on culture. We did some work on culture for Chick-fil-A. We do a culture workshop actually with our clients now. And it was interesting when we did the research on it, Jason. I think it was, several thousand. It's a global study we did on culture, several thousand leaders. And they ranked culture as the number one thing that they could do to impact performance. Having the right culture, building the right culture is the greatest enabler for high performance. But it was interesting when we had them rank order their priorities. Culture, spending time working on culture in the building, came in at number 12 on their list of priorities. And so to me, I think there's a gap between what we say is important, what we think is the most important thing we can do. I don't know about you, I'm not spending very much time on my 12th priority. And so I think it's that's not under the radar, but I think what's under the radar is we don't really know what to do with that. And so to me, I would say leaders need to not underestimate how much time they need to put on culture. It's really the job, if you ask me. And so I think that's undervalued, actually. I would say that's flying under the radar of what most people put on their schedule. That to me is the job of the CEO or the owner, the leader, even the leader of a team. It's like, what is the culture of that like? And I think a lot of times we have this dysfunction going on around us, and we need to look in that mirror, whichever mirror you look in. We need to understand that I'm the one who's enabling that if I'm not careful. And it's not, people don't wake up in the morning and think I'm gonna go and try to make Randy crazy today, and I'm gonna see if I can make him have a bad day. They're most of the time struggling because I didn't create the right culture. I didn't train them. I didn't coach them. I didn't hold them accountable. I didn't incentivize them, whatever. But I didn't create the environment where they could thrive. I think people want to do great work. A lot of times it's on the leader who's not creating that environment for them. So I think leaders underestimate how important culture really is. If it's 12th on your priority list, you can't say you think it's the most important thing and then never work on it and expect it to get better. Hope is not a strategy.
Agreed 100%. Last one, favorite sports team or player?
Well, it's a lot of fun right now to watch Josh Allen play. He's just had a chance to meet him, and just it's amazing how big that guy is. But he's pretty incredible. Watching those guys, I'd say, I'd love to see Buffalo get a Super Bowl. But I'm an Atlanta guy, and I've been a Braves fan my whole life. My dad and I would always watch the Braves growing up together, and still cheering for the Falcons. So hoping they'll somehow turn it around. But I'm an Atlanta guy at heart. But I'm big time. Been cheering for the Bills for the last 5 or 6 years. It's a lot of fun to watch those guys.
Fantastic. Thanks for playing our game. You've been a good sport. It's always nice to get to know our guests a little bit different way than the main questions that what we're talking about. So thank you for being a good sport. I want to get your thoughts on the big trend right now of employers pushing employees to return to office. And are there potential negative impacts to the balance of our work and family life? that aren't being discussed as part of this conversation?
What a great question. I hear that question a lot. I think we live in a world now that to just say we're going to have everybody come back to the office all the time. I think that's hard. It's almost we've let the toothpaste out of the bottle, and it's hard to put it back in, so to speak. And I think there's times where it makes sense to have remote work. I mean, I have a team of people, and there are a few people on my team that are close by here in Atlanta, but we have people all over the country. And so I think you can have better talent potentially if you're willing to allow remote work. I think it comes back to what are you trying to do? But I will say this on the argument for bringing people back. I'm an old school guy as well. So let me go there, because I mean, you got a bunch of people listening who are young guys that are going to say, dude, you're just an old guy and you don't understand. But I do think there's something that happens when you get people in a room together. And if you can put a whiteboard up and have a meeting, and you get, we'd love that when that happens with our team. And I think we take more territory when we do that. And so I think the principle of having people in proximity is important. I think there is a danger if we don't really think through what we're trying to do and who do we need to help us, and what's the best environment for them to do the best work. And I can't answer that. I mean, each person will have to answer that for themselves. Each owner will have to answer that. I have to answer that as an owner. I mean, I own my own business as well. And so it's a challenge, but I would say I want to let the technology, and I want to leverage that to my benefit. There are times that technology is a killer of what I'm trying to do. And I think that technology, in the case of remote work, it's just hard to it's hard to get as much done through email or through a Zoom call even than you can. I mean, if you and I were in a room together right now, there would be a different dynamic than there is. Like, this is great and this is helpful and this allows us to be with people all over the world. But there's something about having them in a room as well. And so I think you're going to have to, if you're a leader that's listening, I think you're going to have to decide what makes sense, and to just say we're going to do it this way and that's the only way. Well, I think you'll lose something if you have that kind of dogmatic thought. At the same time, I think if you on the other side, you just say we're never going to get everybody together, I think you'll lose something there as well. So I think each leader will have to decide. I will say one more thing at home about the technology. I think the danger is, and I'll use a little phrase I've been using for the last few months. I think proximity is not the same thing as intimacy. And so even at work, proximity, what I mean by that, I'm not talking sexual intimacy here. I'm talking connection. And so you can drive that that eighth grader we were talking about, you can drive them to school every single day all year and not be connected. You can be on the phone every morning and he's in the back with his video game or whatever, and you really had that ride and you never talked to each other. You were very close to each other. There are people who are married to each other for decades and they really are not. I mean, they live in the same house, but they're really not together. And I think there are people, you can make everybody come back into the office and be there all the time and still not be connected. And so proximity is not the goal. The goal is connection. And so however you do that, you're going to have to decide that. But I think I'll go out to restaurants all the time and I'll see people, what I'm assuming is a family sitting around a table, and it'll be mom and dad and they're on their phones, and, a kid's on a tablet, and maybe a daughter's on social media, and you've got this, these four people that are together and they're really not together. And so I think, again, I would just hesitate or caution anybody, don't think that getting everybody back in the building will necessarily ensure connection. It won't. You've got to lead people and create an environment for people to be together. And if the best way to do that's online, go for it. And if the best way to do that's in a boardroom, go for it. You'll have to decide.
I don't think we can hit that point hard enough. Proximity is not connection. Write it on your mirror, write it on a sticky note and stick it on your computer monitor, write it on the whiteboard at work, do whatever you need to do. Let's all go into 2025 remembering proximity is not connection.
We're going to put it on the Lead Everyday makeup mirror. That's what we'll do.
that'll be right in the middle of it. So, Randy, we literally have just days left in 2024. Is there anything you're going to accomplish in the next couple of days, couple of weeks? And then what's your big goal for 2025?
Awesome questions. Love that. Yeah, I will do some reflection that last week of the year. I'll spend a little bit extra time. I'm not a big resolution guy. I have a plan that I live by, try to live by every year that I'll create, and I've already been working on it for the last few weeks. And I don't want to think about my business with a business plan and not think about my life. I mean, it's amazing to me how many people give very little thought to their life and where they're going to go. And we're talking about a vacation a minute ago. If I was going to go to Greece, let's say, we would spend months thinking about going to Greece, and we plan out where we're going to stay and what we're going to see and what kind of food and how we're going to get there and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing to me how many people spend so much time thinking about a week of vacation and so little time thinking about an annual plan or what they're going to do for the year. So I love your question. I would say, as I look into this next year, one of the things we're doing is we're trying to produce a lot more video content. People can follow us on our social channels. You'll see that starting to show up in January. We do a lot of that now, but we're going to do a lot more. We're doubling down on that. We've got a new book that's coming out this next year, a book called Lead Every Day. Mark and I've done together, and we just we're just final. It's actually finalized, but we're doing the edits right now, the proof edits right now. It's getting ready to be typeset just in a few weeks, and so that's coming out. We'll continue the podcast. I've got a new podcast, actually an old podcast that I'm waking up. Nobody knows that, so I haven't told anybody yet. But we're gonna kind of rename it, and we're working on something to help people win beyond work. I think there's a market for that. People would be interested in some of that. So yeah, we got all kind of things that are in the works. But I love the idea of being targeted in the way we think about it. I think that's a big that to me, all your audience. What is it that you want to do this next year that's going to have the greatest impact? And one of the questions I'm asking myself, and I don't have the answer yet, but what do I want to be true a year from today that's not true today? I got some things I'm thinking about. I think it's a great question, but I think when we get targeted on it and focused on it, it just becomes so. It becomes so empowering toward that goal. So yeah, focus is huge there. Let's be more strategic than we are sporadic. I think if we're not careful, we'll just be all over the place. And I think that focus really helps us hit the target.
What's one failure that turned out to be your greatest breakthrough, and why should leaders embrace their mistakes?
Man, I could give you a boatload of failures. I was just talking to a guy on our team. Actually, we've tried so much over the last 11 years from a marketing standpoint. I'll just stay in the last decade, but in the marketing standpoint, we've tried so many things that have not worked, and it's been something that has it's just been a struggle. I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness, and it's made me. I mean, 7 or 8 different times, basically every year. I've like, well, that didn't work the way we wanted to. That didn't work the way we want. And so I've wanted to every time just go, oh my gosh, did we just give up? And yet the investment is still worth it. I mean, I don't know how I mean, let's go back to what we're trying to do. We're ultimately trying to help. I said this, I don't say this very much, but we think about trying to encourage and equip 100 million leaders. And that sounds like a lot, but in today's world with technology and, the way the internet helps, that I think it's potential. I mean, it's possible. I'll just say that. Maybe we're capable of it. We'll see. We're going after it. Well, we can't do that without you got to have reach. You got to be able to spread the word. And so we're trying to do that, and we just have not done. We just not done a very good job of that. I mean, our company's been amazing, but there's just more out there. And so anybody's listening, if you want to help spread the word, feel free. We're trying to help as many people as possible. But yeah, that's an area. And I think what my learning from that, really my learning from all my failures as I look back, and again, there've been so many of them, is you get to get back up, and you get to keep trying, and you get to keep reaching. I mean, I love the fact until you're done, here, you're not done. You just keep getting these opportunities. And again, I mentioned I'm a person of faith. I love the fact that we get to wake up every morning and have a new day, and we get a do-over almost. And I think the leader who at the end of the day can assess what happened today, what worked, what didn't work, and adjust. It's almost like a coach. I'm an old coach, and so I love the fact that we have the halftime adjustment when I was coaching back in the day, and you get to do some things different. And I think going into a new year is a perfect time for anybody listening. What do you want to be different? And I think if you don't give a thought to that and you don't focus on that and you don't take steps toward it, it's not even enough. It's not even enough to realize I'm not headed where I want to go. I've actually got to turn around and I got to head in the other direction, but I got to put my foot on the gas in that direction as well. I got to act on that. It's, if I'm going to really create traction in my life. And so, yeah, I think about that a lot. I mean, it's our failures are a gift. I heard somebody say one time, your adversity actually can increase your capacity. And I think that's been really true with me. The things I've gone through, the failures I've had, they really have helped me keep making progress. I mean, I just like, because I'm kind of like you. I want to win. I want to keep trying to do my best, and I'm not going to be judged based on comparing to everybody else. I mean, that's not. I don't get to decide that, but did I do what I was capable of? And too many times I haven't. I'm still trying to make progress here.
Well, as we wrap up, let's try to reach a few more of those 100 million leaders out there right now. To every leader watching, current leader, aspiring leader, watching or listening right now, what's the single most important thing they need to do today to get their team, their people balanced in their work and family lives?
Well, I would say if I could encourage everybody to do one thing, it would be to model it. To me, people always watch the leader. And I think the leader's voice is the loudest voice in the building, but I think her example or his example is louder than his or her voice. And so I think if you're going to really encourage others to value family and value outside of work, whatever, I think if you're working all the time and you don't value that and you don't model that, it'll be hollow if you try to talk about that. So I think a lot of times our example is louder than our words. It just is. And so I would encourage people to model what they want others to follow, not just in family life or outside of work life, but in any area. If it's when it comes to attitude and it comes to being a learner and it comes to being positive, courageous. Don't expect your people to be engaged or courageous if you're not. And so people really do. They do follow the leader. I mean, that's the privilege of being a leader. But it's also was it Shakespeare who said, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." That's the mantle. I mean, it's heavy. It's a responsibility, and to me, it's the greatest gift to be able to use your life to try to help other people get where they're trying to go. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's an excellent place to wrap it up. Randy, this has been incredibly insightful. Hold up that book. Tell everyone where they can find you so they can get a copy of Winning Begins at Home and so they can thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, so here's Winning Begins at Home. They can get it wherever they get their books, really, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. They should be able to find a copy online there. They also can go to leadeveryday.com if they're looking for we've got a bunch of companies that have given them to all their employees. It's a great little gift to your people. And if you want to start that conversation, we've got organizations that are doing little groups talking about it, which is cool. But you can get bulk pricing there if you'll just go to leadeveryday.com. We've got more than you'll probably be able to find at Amazon or wherever, but you can get them out there. Also, there's an Audible version. That's the first Audible book that I've done. So I did the reading on that, and so just got a text a couple of days ago from a guy who had listened to it, and that's cool. So it's available at Amazon as well. So yeah, it's out there. If you need us, our organization, to help your organization, anybody listening, if we can help you with any kind of coaching or training or keynote, anything, just reach out, info@leadeveryday.com, and you can find us there. But yeah, we're out here.
We'll definitely reach out and thank Randy for being here. Check out the website. There's a lot of really great stuff on the Lead Everyday website. I checked it out in some good detail last night. It's definitely worth taking a look at, and get yourself a copy of the book. Randy, I personally want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank everybody watching. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it, leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. We've got lots more amazing leaders coming your way. Also, if you're listening on a platform where you can leave us a review, please leave us a 5-star review if you like this. It really helps us out. It helps get the word out there about the podcast, and it helps get the great guests we've got out there so people can hear what they have to say. So go out there, do great things today. Keep watching, keep developing your leader's mindset. Onward and upward.